Welcome into UGA Football Live with JC Shelton, where the dogs come to talk. All right, everyone, welcome in UGA Football Live with JC Shelton and Arthur Lynch, former Georgia tight end, barber, historian, combine experienced player as well. All right, guys, so we're going to a little NFL Combine as promised show. We're going to talk to you about which dogs made some money in Indianapolis last week. It's a great time to be a football fan. I'm a Combine nerd, NFL draft nerd. I love it. We love watching these players develop and then, really make their money really starting in Indianapolis, right? That's where their really first chance to be up and close in these guys and NFL personnel. Indianapolis, Lucas Oil Stadium, a show out among other guys. It is the Underwear Olympics, all right, but this is a chance for these guys to really improve their draft stock. And there's 11 Georgia Bulldogs were at the event. Some didn't really participate in a certain amount of things. Brock Bowers wasn't on field. I know I was really looking forward to watching him do that, but Georgia's pro day next week on Wednesday. All right, so that's a chance for those guys, and hopefully Brock is feeling healthy there to run in front of these scouts. Artie, I think a good way to really talk about that here in a minute is get your thoughts on, as a player, the experiences leading up to it, the nerves I'm sure there was a lot of, and then ultimately on-field drills and interviews as well. But first, we have this very large event happening next week, started off in Athens in a spring football. I'm going to give you a couple of my takeaways, Artie. I'd love to hear yours, at least what you're looking forward to, not takeaways, rather. I think there's a few questions. I'd love to see Jared Wilson step in at center for CJ Pran. What's that going to look like, right? Because Georgia's going to have a new 5 without Amarius Mims. And said right there at center, Jared Wilson is a really intriguing guy that Cedric said he was more athletic than him. So I love to see what he can do in spring, but also at the cornerback position, who steps in for Kamari. What does that rotation look like? Several questions around there. And then the receiver, Ladd McConkey's gone, Marcus Rosemy-Jacksaint. So there's a lot of things that we'll learn, I think, a good feeling of, and watching these young players really ball out. And this is a good chance for them to get that game atmosphere, especially at G-Day, which you're a big fan of. And I think Georgia fans also everywhere are. Artie, what are you looking forward to the most? A couple of things here as spring practice gets started on Tuesday.
Yeah, I mean, obviously I'm an offensive guy, having played offense, so I always naturally that's kind of my eyes and ears always go to. And I think when you look at the talent that's exiting, right, we lose some firepower, if you will, in Ladd McConkey officially, even though he kind of played sparingly this year, and Brock Bowers. And I think for me, and you and I have belabored this point, and I have talked about it ad nauseum, and I am probably more high than most on my guy Delp. But I'm really excited to see who in the wide receiver room, and I know there's 3 transfers that are going to have a really good opportunity to make some noise, but who in the wide receiver room is going to step up and fill the void of McConkey's production, right? And I think at the wide receiver position, we need to get a playmaker, right? And we need to get one who's explosive, who's reliable, who's going to make the tough catch on a third and short, third and long. And so I'm really interested to see the wide receiver room and see how that develops. And really, ultimately, I think the tight end room has been, of the past, let's call it 4 or 5 years, has just been such a difference maker for the Georgia offense, right? Whether it be point of attack, run blocking, with Washington, and the combination between Washington and Bowers, and obviously Bowers and what he has been able to do, to really just put a defense on full tilt, you know what I mean, and keep them guessing throughout a game and throughout a season. So I'm very excited to see who steps up in the tight end room. I know where my money is on, right, and whose it's on, but I do think there's several guys in that room who have a lot of talent, right, and I think Bobo has proven over the course of his entire career to utilize the tight end. And I'm just kind of excited to see who steps up, right? Are they going to be Brock Bowers? I don't know. But I do think there's a lot of guys in that room who have a ton of talent. And I think it's going to be very fun to watch them compete to see who rises above the rest, if not if one chooses to rise rises above the rest, or if they kind of go as a committee.
Yeah, and you speak of the tight end room there, and we have a transfer addition that's really talented there in Benjamin
Yeah,
Yurosek from
totally.
Stanford, right? So how does he fit in? That's gonna be a really interesting storyline that I'm looking forward to and watching how he plays and how Georgia uses him. He's more of that guy who can, do a Brock Bowers end around, right? He's got
Hmm.
he's got really great speed at his size, and he did that at Stanford. They used him a lot in the run game. All right. So while we haven't seen necessarily Oscar do something like that, could he provide that facet in his game? And you get them both on the field at the same time, and he uses a runner as well. More than just a blocker and a receiver. So that's gonna be a really interesting storyline to watch as well. Now, when we're thinking about where these Bulldogs will land in the NFL draft coming up, and you talked about again, even just speaking about tight end room, Georgia's had 5 tight ends taken, right? A tight end, at least one in each draft the last 5 years, about to be 6 with Bowers going. So that room has showed so much promise under Todd Hartley and what have you. And I think how they used him and the NFL really just the development that Georgia is seeing each year. It's a recruiting pitch for these guys. And
Hmm.
Bowers is that latest guy, so he should be running here on the pro day about a week from today. And other guys are also going to be participating. There's several guys who did not participate in all the drills here, and we'll look at them here. Bowers didn't perform on field. Marcus Rosemy-Jackson, at receiver, he didn't run the 40, so he's going to do that at pro day. You've got guys like Dejon Edwards also going to run the 40 at his pro day, and there's a couple more guys as well. Kamari Lassiter didn't run the 40. He had a great short shuttle. Kamari Lassiter did the best at the combine, 4.12, which was impressive. And then you have Amarius Mims, one of those guys we'll get to in a minute, who's just an absolute beast. We were talking about it before the show. We'll talk about
Hmm.
his numbers. Before we get into that, Artie, we'll bring some clips up for you guys on YouTube as well, and I'll try to explain those in the audio format for you podcast listeners. Artie, take us through kind of what that process was like from getting the invite to deciding if you were to go. Was that more like, duh, I'm going to go, or did you really think about it? And then the process kind of leading up to it, getting through interviews and the media scrums. It sounds like a lot, and it seems like a lot and long days. How was that process for you?
Yeah, it's a great question, and really, halfway through, leading up to your, let's even take it back. Like the spring before your senior year, every draft eligible player or senior person has like this kind of like on campus combine, if you will, when NFL scouts come to campus and they do like your height, weight. You don't do any like drills, but they kind of just like begin your NFL profile, right? It's the first time they give you a height and weight. You don't train for it. They just kind of show up one day. All the seniors go in one room, or the incoming juniors, and you basically just kind of get like borderline naked in the training room, and they just measure you out. And you fill out questionnaires and a questionnaire and so on and so forth. And then about halfway through your senior year, um, your last year of eligibility, let's call it that, because I know we got like super seniors now. Um, the NFL, you'll start gaining interest from these like senior bowls or postseason bowls. And as you're still playing your season, you start thinking about where you want to do combine training. And you and I kind of talked a little bit about this when we talked about the senior bowl. I got the Senior Bowl invite halfway through my senior year. I chose IMG Academy right after or during the Gator week leading up to the Gator Bowl. And then once you get to your combine training facility, you don't yet have a combine invite. All underclassmen who declare themselves to the NFL draft, I believe, get a combine invite. And then seniors are picked, right? And I remember it was kind of a big day at IMG, although most of us assumed that we were getting invited because we were all like graded out as draftable players. You don't know until you get the invite, right? And so I remember getting the call from my agent. He's like, "You got to invite to the combine. You know, start thinking about what you're going to do." And in my mind, I was like, "I'm going to do everything." Right? I was not a Brock Bowers. I think we can all agree. So it was. I realized that hey, like I could only help myself at a combine, right? Like if I go out there and run a 5 flat, they're like, he was slow. That's what he expected. So it's like the way I saw it was like I'm going to sit here at IMG in this bubble and try to maximize my numbers the best I possibly can, right? And that combine training, which we probably could do a whole episode on, and maybe we should at some point down the road, but you're basically getting hyper focused each day on these events, right? There's a mental aspect of it, right? Your Wonderlic, your kind of like puzzle games they make you do. Then you meet with like a mock interview person um, with on the IMG's campus, so they get you ready for this what I call speed dating aspect of interviews. You're basically all 32 teams have 32 round tables in this kind of big ballroom. You know, the clock goes on, you meet with the team, on to the next after the clock. And it's just like a merry-go-round for 4 hours. And then it gets cut off at 11 at night and you go back to your room, or you're supposed to, but sometimes teams hold you back, right? That's like the mandatory meetings over the 4 days. But then you have these cue cards where you get individualized meetings if a team asks you to come on. And what I think people don't realize about the combine, it's not one of those things where you show up on day one, do your physical, and then you do your on the field workout, and there's meetings sprinkled around there. It's a 4 day event where the you don't have you don't really have time to eat. You don't really have time to do anything other than hurry up and wait to the next segment of whatever you have to do. It starts with paperwork, then it's like from my understanding, it ended up being like a 12 to 16-hour medical day, right? You're examined by all 32 teams. If they find anything wrong with you, right? I had a scope in my right knee when I was 14 years old. Never had a problem with it. To this day, you don't have a problem with it. But they're like, wait, you had a scope done when you were 14? Go to the MRI. So I ended up having to lay in an MRI machine for 6 hours. And they scoped my knee, my back, my shoulder, even though I never had a shoulder injury. But these doctors are just kind of basically pulling on every limb to see if there's any deficiencies in your body. They mark it, and then you go get X-rays or MRIs if they think there's a deficiency.
Already, dude, that's exactly where I would have been kicked out of the combine. If I let's say
Yeah.
I had a different life and God put me in a different spot, and I'm like you, I'm going to the that would be it, dude. I still my shoulder issues from high school still bother me, man. I mean,
Oh, dude.
that's wild.
Dude, wild. And like in, there were guys there who went there completely healthy, or they thought they were completely healthy. And then by the end of this 32 team physical exam, right? And like you're bare, not bare, you're in your boxers on this table and you got strangers. You don't know any of these dudes. They're team doctors and they're just like, pull at that knee, pull at this knee, pull at this knee. And sure enough, like you don't say no because this is the biggest job interview of your life, right?
Mhm.
So you're kind of like yes ma'am, no ma'am, or yes sir, no sir type deal throughout this whole process. And there were guys who trained for the combine, were going to run, and then they found like a heart deficiency or their an ankle thing, and then all of a sudden they said you're medically disqualified, you can't compete. And meanwhile, when you're not getting through this medical process, they pull you away to do psychological testing, Wonderlic testing, media obligations. Different teams will just kind of grab you any possible chance they get, sit you down, and ask you funky, weird questions, right? Like I
Yeah.
got one, you know, tell me how many different ways, like what, explain to me all the different ways that you can use a brick as a tool. And like my dumbass said, you could use it as a weapon. They probably thought I was
Yeah.
Aaron Hernandez.
That's
They probably thought I was Aaron Hernandez 2.0 or something. You know what I
that's
mean?
exactly where my mind just went when you said that. I said, "I
Y-
throw it through a window," I guess. I mean, I've seen that happen.
yeah.
I like, "What?" But you talked about the injuries there before you get into interviews. You talk about the injuries there. Alabama's Kool-Aid McKinstry, who's gonna be one of the
Mhm.
top corners drafted, he had that issue this past week. The doctors he had never known he had a hairline fracture in his foot. It was either
Dude,
his
yeah,
foot or
you
his
don't
ankle.
know. And it's and you and I could talk about it. They did not disclose that I had a back injury to me. They just gave me the okay. And had they disclosed it to me, maybe I address the issue before my rookie year and I don't get hurt, right?
Wow.
There's just some weird stuff about that week, but you're just so focused on like get me to the on the field drills. But what they don't tell you is they don't really feed you. You don't get good sleep. And then on the very last day, the very last thing that you do is your on the field drills. and you're pretty like beat by then. But at that point, adrenaline takes over, and you just try to perform the best you possibly can. And for guys like me who are like, I need to go earn money here, like Ryan McConkey's a perfect example. He has all the game tape he could want, but people will probably say, is he as fast as he is? Is he as quick as he is? Is he healthy? Blah, blah, blah. Obviously, we'll talk about him a little bit more here in a second about how he earned some money, but you just try to go out and perform. But as soon as you get done, right? As soon as you're done, there's no more like media. They just put you on a bus, put you on a plane, and you're out of there. So it's like you don't even have time to really like take
Process.
it in,
Mm.
right? And you're and I think that's why people invest so much money in these pre-combine training because you really don't want to like lay an egg. And the meetings are just as important as the on the field drills. But there's so much going on behind the scenes, and then now it's almost like a Super Bowl event, right? Now they probably have more media obligations. Now they have, you know, your agent is probably pulling you to different directions to go meet with like Nike, Adidas, nope, whatever, insert sponsorship, right? For like the top tier guys. So I do think that it's still important, but I think this year, and it's been a common trend, is you see some really high profile guys, whether it be Marvin Harrison Jr. or Caleb Williams, being like, I can only lose money here, right? I'm already in an uncomfortable situation here in Indianapolis. I have the leverage. I'm going to sit out. Guys like me, I had no leverage, right? But it is a very stressful, but important and meaningful job interview. And in my opinion, it's the biggest job interview anybody's going to have because of what's
Mhm.
at stake, and that's an opportunity to play in the NFL.
Yeah, an opportunity to make a lot of money early too with the higher draft pick. It just completely changes your contract, right? If you're
Totally,
drafted higher, right? It's a completely different ball game if you get drafted higher. It's not something to look over. But you're talking about how big it's become. The NFL has done obviously a great job of marketing this thing, right?
hundred
The
percent.
amount of money from ads and people having people there from every outlet imaginable almost. And I just talking to the guys who cover it there every year, it's like, they're sending 3 or 4 more reporters than they used to. And that was like 10 years ago. And
Oh
then
yeah,
also, this is the first year, this combine was the first year that the NFL and college football, please do something like this, but it probably won't ever happen. But the NFL had basically a content creator pass for YouTubers who get
hmm.
millions of views on NFL content every month. They allowed them in. And I follow one, I can't remember his name on Twitter. I like to give him a shout out if I remember his name because he does great stuff. But that was his first time he got to do that. He's pretty, filming everything at the media scrums and everything like that. So you got even more guys there. And I think for introverts, which I think even me personally doing that, being in front of all those people like that, probably wouldn't be great for me. And I think I can't help but think about somebody like Brock Bowers, who's just a natural introvert. You hear it all the time. He's not a good quote. He's not. It's nothing against him. He's an introvert. He's cared about ball, right? That's all he cares about, man. He cares about learning, doing the right things, and playing ball. So I bet if I had to assume, he probably didn't have great interviews from that standpoint, as far as like telling teams about himself and stuff like that. But I think when it comes to football knowledge, he probably excelled that way.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point, right? Like, not everyone needs to be like Peyton Manning, right? Who like you could who can host, or Travis Kelsey who can like host SNL and also play ball, right? There are just different there are dudes who are just kind of you know that probably are not going to be the greatest. I think Matt Stafford is kind of like that, right? Matt Stafford was about his business, right? He's not. I mean, yeah, he's on the commercials now and all that stuff, Super Bowl winner. But like, if you ever met him, like the nicest, most humble, just kind of laid back guy. But he's not like this, like gregarious, just like naturally charismatic. Put his arm, you know what I mean? He's
Mm,
just kind of like, hey, I'm a baller. I'm gonna let my play do the talking in the field, and I think some teams probably look for guys that are just like maybe more not more entertaining, but to your point, like just that is going to interview well. But it's like at some
yeah.
point you just got to be like Nick Chubb, he's about his business, right?
Mhm.
You got
Yeah.
what was his quote? Like, I don't tweet because like you never see
Yeah,
Lamborghini have a commercial or something like
exactly. Dude, I
stuff
love
like
that
that.
stuff.
So
And it's,
I,
like,
I think
subjective too, right? When you look at sorry to jump on you.
No, no, you're good.
It's like subjective as far as the coaches have their interviews. So like, how does Mike McDaniel with the Dolphins, he's hilarious. I love everything
100%.
he does. But how does he look at an interview when you have a guy like that, maybe more introvert, doesn't really talk about himself like that, but wants to play ball? And how does a guy like Detroit's coach, his name's slipping my mind, it's Dan
Dan
Campbell.
Campbell.
How does he? I bet he loves that guy. I bet he loves that guy just talking about ball and working hard, right?
So the speed dating that I was talking about everybody about 2 minutes ago. I speed dated with Dan Campbell. Like I remember sitting at the round table, and he drafted me. Right, he was a Dolphins coach, and I got drafted, and like I connected with him right away because he was like this big 6'5", kind of a not like everyone calls him a meathead, but just like tough, you could tell he's tough. And he's like, I made my, I earned my stripes in this league for blocking. And he's like, that's how you're going to earn your stripes in this league to me. But like, he was just this. I remember looking at him like, when did you retire? Like, I thought he like was a first year coach who just retired. You know what I mean? But it's like you're totally right. Right? He was a guy that I wanted to interview him. You know what I mean? Because he was such an
Yeah.
interesting character.
Mhm.
But and then there's other coaches where you're just like, this is an awkward silence. Like, when blow the horn so I can go to the next one, right? You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah, it seems like just from following as much as I do that coaches do have different approaches and some put you in uncomfortable situations on purpose. That's what it seems like to me, just reading the accounts from other guys, and how that goes. But it's funny that you talk about Dan Campbell like that because I would love to interview with him too. I mean, he's a man's man. You know what I mean? He's got 2 large coffees with double espresso on the counter. He's got a dip in his mouth, probably on both sides. He's ready to go, man. He's ready to fight
What
zombies.
my rookie year, and this we're gonna get off top here, but I was rookie, so I had to hold his dip, his red man shoe. That was, and I had to buy him dip and some other stuff. The rookie title, but there is. I'm a de facto Lions fan because I love Dan Campbell is the man, but there is everything you see about him for that is who he is, and you can't beat him. But anyway,
Yeah.
we can keep talking combine.
No, but that's the insight we love to hear. That's what I like to hear. I'm here for that. I love to go through combine stuff too, but that's good stuff already. I love that, man. Um, yeah, but let's get into here. Well, I think I'll start it with this way, guys. Let's talk Bulldogs who didn't necessarily improve their draft stock here. Um, Not that many of them, but I think with Bowers not testing, obviously, I don't think we don't have the takeaways from his interviews, right? We're not plugged into these NFL teams. So he might have had great interviews. We don't know yet. But he came in at 6'3", 243, 32 and 3/4 inch arms, hands 9 3/4. Not huge numbers, but if you watch Georgia tape at any point of the last 3 seasons, those numbers don't concern you because he plays different. He plays absolutely different. And I saw a tweet and everybody jumped on it, especially Dog Nation, and I did too. And I usually don't, but it was just I had to. It was saying, pulling up Bowers' numbers here, which puts him in like the 30th percentile of tight ends and most every category about how he better test well because these numbers don't look like a first round draft pick or a top tight end draft pick. I'm like, you didn't watch tape. I mean, you can. That's for the
Mhm.
numbers guy. You got to, if you're gonna be a numbers guy, you got to watch tape too. You got to watch the games. You got to think about those intrinsic values that he provides that are not going to be measured by a tape ruler or a scale. Um, so just keep that in mind. Keep that in mind. Tape, he's gonna be fine. I think he's gonna run well at the pro day. We expect him. He doesn't do those things on the field by accident. I mean, he's gonna. I think he's gonna explode next week, the pro day, and put everybody on
I
notice.
mean, to me, his comp is. I mean, again, I've said this before. People are like his football comp. People is Aaron Hernandez, and I know that's a sensitive subject. I'm not trying to lift him up, but Aaron Hernandez was would have been a first round pick if he was not, and he was only 6'1.5", maybe 6'2", but that dude was one of the best football players I've ever seen. Played against him when he was at Florida, watched him in the NFL. I always said that Hernandez and him were utilized the same way. Evan
Mm.
Ingram, first round pick, very similar measurements to Brock Powers. Probably hasn't has played very well in the league, but has been on teams where they haven't utilized him, or he hasn't been on very good teams, right? And I think Brock Powers is going to put himself in a position now where, depending on where he goes, he's not Gronkowski, right? He is not the guy Laporta. He's not Kittle. But those
That's
three
what I've
guys
seen
are
a lot
based
is Laporta. Laporta, everybody keeps I'm like, he's faster than him. He's
100%.
like
Laporta
a
is 6'6", 265.
yeah, I'm like,
A great tight end, but like they're not doing the same stuff.
yeah,
There's
maybe production as a whole,
totally.
maybe in
But
his
like
in his rookie year. He had a great rookie year,
but
but
but running you could have two running backs that have similar stats, but be totally different backs. You know what I
mhm,
mean?
yeah,
Like Julian Edelman's playoff numbers are huge, and they rival Jerry Rice's two different wide receivers. You know what I mean?
yeah.
So I just think that you can't put a tight end in a box, particularly not in this day and age. Maybe 20 years ago you could, but today's a different
Yeah,
ballgame.
totally different ball game, and I think Bowers is gonna take full advantage of that. It's like perfect time for him,
100%.
right? As a
100%.
football player. And
100%.
also, off track here a little bit, but on topic. Brock Bowers, he is on Madden NFL 24, Madden Ultimate Team, and that's sometimes I partake. And I just got his player card, so I'm playing with my boy Bowers out on the outside. I put him at X receiver, dusting folks, just absolutely dusting folks. But going on the same lines as the guys who might have not right boosted their draft stock here. Kendall Milton ran a 4.62. Now, did teams expect him to run different? I don't think so. I think he really, with the long legs he has at 6'1.5", 225 too. He picks up speed the farther he goes. He had a good split at 151. I don't
Dude,
I don't
that's a big back, man.
he is a big guy. That's why I like highlighted the pounds wise, because you still need those bruisers, right? Because that's what he
You
gives
remember
you.
Beanie Wells from Ohio State?
Oh my goodness. Beanie
He
Wells was
reminds me of Beanie
ridiculous.
Wells.
Yeah?
Dude.
How tall was Beanie Wells? Was he that
Oh,
tall?
dude. No, I wasn't that tall, but
He
dude,
was a bowling ball, right?
he has some legs, man.
Yeah,
He
but I
has some
think
legs.
you look back on tape. I mean, he's a huge back. So, and guys, NFL teams still need that. They still need that mostly it's rotational by committee. You got your third down back,
100%.
right? You got your 1 and 2 hitters in the first early downs. Milton, I think, can provide that. He has the tape that he gave at the end of Georgia's season last year, I think is
Mhm.
what is going to get him a good draft spot, at least in his
I
term,
agree.
right? Maybe not the combine performance. He did put up 18 reps on bench and at with 32 almost inch arms, still really good. Broad
And
feet,
for Broad,
yeah.
36 inch. That's all about explosiveness, right?
Mhm.
I bet you he clean squats and press the house, right? That's
Yeah.
to me. This reads like a guy who'll probably get drafted in the fifth, sixth round
Mm.
because of the lack of production. But with lack of production means he hasn't had too many hits to the head. His shoulders are probably fine. He's probably going to be a guy that's going to end up having Don't be surprised if year two he has 1,000 yards rushing because he's dirt cheap to have on the roster,
Mhm.
and he's reliable, he's smart, and he's going to be durable. Hopefully, I know he's had some injuries in college, but that's
Yeah.
how I see Kendall Milton playing out.
Yeah, and I'm glad I think it benefited him to go through all those drills too. Um,
Totally.
Edwards elected to not to do some things. He did broad. He did 9'6". He weighed in at 207, 5'10". Got great measurements when you're thinking about those best backs, but he's an all around guy. He showed that. He was a good pass protector as well, even at that size in the SEC. I'm just not sure if he boosted his draft stock. I think if he runs a really good time next week, it should show a lot of good things for him. Um, and you look at the guys like at receiver Rosemary Jack Saint, who looking forward to him run his 40, 33-inch arms at 6'1", 10-inch hands. And how many times do we see him go up and grab balls around defenders, on top of defenders at Georgia, right? And I think when you're considering him as just a receiver prospect, you might be maybe underlooking this a bit because he was such a really good special teams player. And you look at those special team Hall of Famers, basically. There's only one, and that's
Matthew
Devin Hester.
Slater,
That's exactly what I'm thinking about. How much does he reminds me so much of Matthew Slater, and he might be even better
100%,
receiver, right? I
hundred
think he
percent.
and yes, and he missed time with that leg injury at Georgia. I think he's still developing, and he showed a lot of explosiveness. So we don't have that 40 time to go off of. That'll be next week. And then defensive backs wise, I think last year, obviously I said it earlier, didn't run his 40, but he had the best short shuttle of the combine. He weighed in 186, almost 6 foot. And we know what his tape is. It's just locked down corner. Excited to see what he runs next week. He looked really good in the drills, and we're going to show clips here upcoming of Bullard Javon Bullard and Tyke Smith, both really tested well. All right, those guys really boosted their draft stock, I think, as well as Amarius Mims. We'll get into. I'm going to save his measurements here for a second. We pull up these clips.
I
But
call Trent Williams 2.0.
Trent Williams,
2.0. Oh yeah, that's a
good
big dude
comp,
right
man.
there, man.
That's a huge dude, right? And he's like, he has like, what is his body fat percentage? I'm just in. Yeah,
I don't know. That's a big dude, man.
I don't know how many guys out there sitting thinking about Marius Mims' body fat percentage, but I'm one of them. He does not look 340 pounds. His body's just different, man. That's a tackle. That's why he has 8 starts in college, and that's why he's still a first round pick. I mean, that just
dude, he's a beast.
yes.
He kind of looks like he's a cross between Trent Williams and Tyron Smith.
Yeah.
Tyron Smith from the
Mhm.
Cowboys.
But before we get into these clips and these really big time performances by McConkey, Bullard, Tyke Smith, Mims, Zion Logue, he weighed in 314, 6'6". Could be a nose tackle in the NFL. He played a lot of that at Georgia. Didn't test necessarily off the charts, so I think late rounds, 6th, 7th, just from what we're seeing.
Mhm.
I mean, it's a really good defensive tackle, nose tackle class as well, right? And then Van Pran here, Cedric, I would have loved to see him run a little faster because that's what I feel like that's what the best centers in the league do, right? They're great pullers. You look at Jason Kelsey, happy retirement to that man. Love watching him for the Eagles. He did it for so long. But the tenacity and the speed he pulls with, he did run a 1.77 10-yard split, right? So that's what we want to focus on, right, Artie, with the offensive lineman and defensive lineman. And his short shuttle was 4.82 at nearly 300 pounds. I just know that he's such a gamer and a leader, right? And just vicious in the trenches. That's all he showed it. And he, 30-something starts for the Georgia for the last 3 seasons. I think whoever gets him gets a steal. I just think he's not going to go very early, right?
Centers usually don't, though. I mean, it's an interesting. I mean, David Andrews undrafted, right? Like Ben Jones was a 4th-round pick.
Mhm.
I can see Van Pran probably going 3rd-round pick and being a 12-year pro. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or probably 3rd to 5th-round pick, but he's not going to fall outside of the 5th round. I doubt it.
Yeah, and you talk about injuries. He didn't get injured. I don't think he
No,
missed a
that's what I'm saying.
start
He'll be a 12-year
in 3
pro.
seasons. Yeah, I mean, he has that durability that you're looking for at that position as well, and it's just a great leader. A guy who wants to do it the right way. Very, very well spoken too. He's a media member's dream, pretty much. But let's all right, Artie, let's get into these clips right here. I got some clips for you guys, and for you podcast listeners, I'm gonna try to explain this. All right, so this right here, we've got Lab McConkey's gauntlet drill. So gauntlet drill, right? You start on the end zone, or you start on the sideline. You got a couple quarterbacks, quick spin around catch, and then you're running. And you've got passers from both sides of the field throwing balls at you. You got to catch them, drop them, run, finish at the end. And this is where we really saw Lad McConkey's skills. I'm talking hand-eye coordination, his hips, his feet. Look how quick he moves here.
They can all run and they can all catch. This is McConkey. How about McConkey? We were looking this up. Charles.
Dude, he's so smooth.
If you're just listening, you could hear the balls clapping his hands. And then the announcers, Daniel Jeremiah, responding to just how smooth he looked. And you said it right there, Artie. I don't think you could have done it better. And then his 40 right here, you saw just this explosiveness. And when you think about McConkey and his back injuries, obviously the ankle that really bothered him towards the end of the year, missed 4 games with that back early in the season. Was he, that was a big question. Is he healthy? Are those injuries going to linger? I didn't see any back issues. And Artie, you were the man to speak to about the back problems. RIP, my brother. I know that's bothering you, but
I'm not dead, but I appreciate it.
Yeah, he is fun. Ooh, lad.
Dude. Explosive.
Dude, I mean, this guy made a ton of money, man.
I know.
I saw a mock the other day. PFF, I think, did a mock and had him going 32 to the Chiefs. You think he'd do well in that offense? You know what I mean?
My gosh.
That was 4 years of Mahomes, then he'll get a big real deal and make some real money.
Yeah. because he screams on tape, he screams separation just because his start-stop ability, right? And really sure hands drop 6% of his passes. Um, the question was, does he have the breakaway speed from NFL guys? Once start stop, are they going to be able to catch you? And I think right there, and he ran a 4.39 official, that 4.43 or 4.40 on the screen. He ran a 4.39 official. Yeah, he just absolutely made some money, and he was already getting first round talks. He might have solidified it here already, which would be awesome for him. And as a guy who had a handful of offers, right, was unheralded, worked his way up the depth chart, and just led Georgia in receiving for 2 straight years, and then last year had the injuries. Really special for him.
His comp to me is Antonio Brown because if Antonio Brown obviously was a vertical threat, McConkey can be a vertical threat. But Antonio Brown made so much of his money and production on those like option type routes, those slant routes, those 10, 15-yard digs, right? And the way he would get separation, yes, he was explosive, yes, he was fast, but it was his route running ability, his ability to get in and out of breaks efficiently, quickly, and use the leverage that the defense gives him. In my opinion, there is not a prospect that does that better than Lad McConkey. Antonio Brown, about 5'11, 200 something pounds. McConkey, about 5'11, close to 200 something pounds. 40 is around the same. But if you watch Lad McConkey, his film at the Senior Bowl is the best example of it, right?
Mhm.
His ability to use the leverage that the defense gives him and then break them off on those different types of like option routes, in routes, out routes, slants. Antonio Brown, man, particularly the year he was on the Bucks in that Super Bowl year, he wasn't doing like the Randy Moss, I'm gonna run a go and just burn the guy. He was breaking dudes off in those
Mhm.
option routes that Brady loves because Brady loves when his receivers understands the leverage the defense gives them, right? And I
Absolutely.
think Lad McConkey is a really smart player. Actually, I don't think that. I know that. We all know that. But I think what he has done now is shown that, hey, I'm a 4-4 guy, right? 4-3, excuse me. I'm a 4-3, 4-4 guy. My tape speaks for itself. The speed you see on film is actual, real burner speed. But that his ability to get in and out of breaks and make tough catches, man, I see Antonio Brown. That's his on the field comp for me. Some people might disagree.
No, I love that comp, and I'm seeing more good comps now. People are being honest with themselves,
Hmm.
right, about this because before, of course, you get your race-based comps. You got Julian Edelman,
Yeah,
you got
Julian
Wes
Edelman,
Welker.
Westwell. It's yeah, no,
No, not absolutely. Great players, but different players, right? This is the more the comp for him. And I think his 40 times showed that as well. And then
hmm
obviously, when you're talking about the option routes and being smart and knowing when to sit in coverage, where to sit in coverage in those zones, what is that, Artie? That's a first down machine when you can do that.
first,
That
yeah,
is that is I need 10 yards. Maybe I'm behind the sticks. I need 12 yards. He's gonna go 13. He's gonna go 12.5 yards and lay down and get and you're playing and you got 4 more downs, right?
that's also it's like I'm good for 80 catches minimum a year for the next 10 years, probably 90.
Yeah.
Yeah, seriously though,
Yeah.
like because it's just like you know what I mean. Like yeah, he can take that. He can play an X or Z, but like where
Mhm.
he's going to make his money is motions. See what the defense gives him. It's zone, sit,
Yeah.
inside leverage, break out, outside leverage, break in. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? Man coverage, just break them off, run a slant. And
Yeah.
I just think he's a stud, man. I've liked him since day one.
Absolutely, and he's gonna lull you to sleep. He's gonna lull you to sleep with the sit down in the zone like you're talking about, breaking in or out, maybe
Mhm.
option, and all of a sudden he's gonna use that acceleration we just talked about, that quick start stop, and he's by you, and you ain't catching him with a 4.39. You're not. You got a good
No,
quarterback who can spin it, and all these NFL guys can throw it a mile. You're good. I love that for him. Made some money. That's number one on UJ Football Lives. Made some money. Number two, getting a little Javon Bullard. Okay, Javon absolutely special, and we'll switch it right here. 5'10", one half, 198, 40-yard dash, 4.47. Great time for him. I wasn't sure he was going to run. Right, you get a bigger guy like that at that height that played safety and a lot of that nickel that first year he really came on the scene. I wasn't sure he was going to run. I thought anything under 4.5 would have been really great for him, and 4.47, 151 split. I think that was really good times with it, and that just stood out to me. I tweeted it. But you can see him use this speed in these backpedal drills right here, and just how smooth his hips were running. We'll show it real quick. This one. And then he high points that ball right there. Boom. Love that for him. His fluidity. I know a lot of experts were talking about that. And you get into his 40 here and you see the explosiveness.
Kill showed up and Waddle showed up, and all of a sudden his play changed.
That's a good point right there. Bullard with
Great
a 4.47.
Those legs are working hard. He doesn't have that long stride, Artie. Still a great time. It
I
felt
thought
like
he
you
was
didn't even
bigger
open
than
up.
5'10", personally, but he looks like a big dude, man. He looks
Yeah, well,
bigger than what he measured in at.
Yeah, he's almost 5'11", right? 5'10 and a half. But he does, and Daniel Jeremiah was talking about that size on him. He's really fills out, right? He's a strong guy, and he can take. And I think that just points to how strong of a tackler he was. He's one of the best tacklers on the team, and Georgia has a lot of defensive backs like that. That's what they focus on. Kirby Smart, Will Muschamp, those guys focus on quality tacklers because I know that's the biggest separation for these great defenses. Can you tackle? You talk about Michigan's defense last year, some of the best tacklers in the country. They were all 60-year seniors, so they knew what to do. But that's what made them, I think, one of the best defenses in the country last year, maybe the best. And really similarly to Javon was Tyke Smith's performance. And you talk about a guy who was an All-American at West Virginia, got to Georgia, was really, the fan base was really excited to watch him play and how he would work in this defense. And then the injuries piled up, and he had to wait his turn. And you know how stressful that could be on your mentality as someone who plays football. That's what you do. That's what you want to do, and all of a sudden it's taken away from you. He stuck through it, and just from my recollection of him, he's a great kid as well. And I think you could feel that through his passion. Had a great season, led the team in tackles last year from his spot right there, and he played that star position for Javon. Javon went back to safety, but another versatility guy, right? He can play multiple positions just like Javon did, and I think that really bodes well for him. And then his performance at the combine really stood out, and I think he made some money. He's one of those guys. We'll see his back pedal here.
Part, DJ, is how much more we're getting those mirror safeties, right? Where one floats down, one drops back, and then the next play it might be the other. Might just flip it.
They do it all post snap, ideally.
Missed that ball there, bad pass, but really fluid in his back pedal there, and then his 40 was really good as well. Under 5, I didn't see him running under 5. Just like again, and he fills out his pad.
The Wiggins time that you see on the screen, that's an official time of 4.28. These are all unofficial times.
It's amazing how many 4.4s we got these days, man. Like I remember when 4.4 was like a rarity, you know what I mean? And now it's like it's just unbelievable to me how fast these guys are.
And then that's a guy for Tyke. He's sitting there at 202 pounds, 5'10", about a half an inch shorter than Javon. At 202, at 5'10", and he runs like that. And then he also vert 36 inches, broad jump 10 feet.
He's explosive.
Yeah, absolutely explosive. And he was one of the best tacklers. And he's a straight up nickel. I could see Javon playing safety as well, but straight up nickel because he plays like a linebacker. And you see that from his production in the SEC, Artie. And, playing on offenses with some of those backs that you play with at Georgia, and how hard it is to tackle those guys. And also, tight ends, receivers, these tackles coming to get you on a screen block, right? Having that size is really beneficial for you there in the nickel spot.
Man, in DB, like you have to be. The new rules have taken away a little bit of your ability to be aggressive, right? Which means you have to be a surefire tackler more so now than ever. What do I mean by that? You can't just be lowering your shoulder or trying to go for those kill shots anymore. The Sean Jones and Rashad Jones, those days are kind of over. And Greg Blue, right? Like you got to be very, very, very sure about your leverage, wrapping up. You got to be tackling like a linebacker, and you're half the damn size of a linebacker. So I think this ability to show your tackling ability on tape and then translating here at the combine, like, I'm a 4.4 guy. I weigh 202, but I can wrap him up. You know what I mean? I can blitz off the corner hit a guy in his midsection and not try to blow him up, right? Like, I think that's really important because the reason why we see these I don't want to call them inflated stats, but the reason we see these offensive stats each year is because the game of football has changed and favors the offensive side of the ball now more than ever.
Absolutely. And we'll save the best for last, or at least the most frightening for last.
My love them, dude. I love the big men, dude. The big men get me so fired up.
Dude, man, Amarius Mims had a day. In case you missed it, we'll just talk. He's 6'7", 3/4. We'll call him 6'8", weight 340.
Dude,
Had the
that's so big.
second largest arms among offensive linemen at 36 inches and 1/8. Biggest hands at 11 and 1/4 inches. I think mine are 9, so that's just crazy to think about.
I have 10 plus hands. Like I had like big hands at the combine. If I were to shake his hand, I would feel like a child.
Yeah,
No,
absolutely.
no
We all would. We all would.
Dude,
and then he looked like, who did he look like? The Avenger comp got me. Thanos. He looked like Thanos for the Avengers, against the Avengers, running down Captain America right here. This 40. We'll play it.
Going back through my notes here, Sean.
This is a large man here.
Look at his
Oh my gosh.
flexibility.
Mims, pardon me, of Georgia. Let's see him run. Look at him go.
He looks like an Avenger.
Good Lord.
Love that.
He looks like an Avenger.
He's moving, man. 5'7" at 6'7", 3/4, and 340 pounds. 5'07".
I encourage everyone to go read the book The Blind Side and another book called The Meat Market, which is Meat Market is Bruce Feldman. Obviously, Blind Side is Michael I forgot it. Yeah, and but both of those books explain the kind of like, and they're very outdated now, but they kind of explain the profile of like what you're looking for in prototypical football players, right? And Mims is a prototypical tackle, right? Like truly a prototypical, and it's super hard to find the height, the weight, the athleticism, and then the toughness. And it's just such a unique position because you and I have talked about this, and shout out Christian Robinson, just hired as the University of Alabama linebackers coach. Going to make me conflicted once again. Now he's back in the SEC. But he always used to say, he goes, there could be tons of NFL players that play in the league, and you could see them. They're bigger guys, but they don't look too different than a normal person. But he's like, sometimes there's just a body, right? And you just see the body, and you're like, that's an NFL body. A true NFL prototypical tackle sticks out even more than like an NFL body. It's like, oh, that dude's a left tackle. He's going to play 15 years, and he's probably going to make $200 million playing football. My guess is Mims, if his head's on straight, is going to make $200 million playing football, protecting the quarterbacks who are making $500 million. And I bring up those books, and The Blind Side talks about it a little bit because they talk about Lawrence Taylor, Theismann, the importance of protecting the blind side. That's like the opening chapter. But the reason why they make so much money is because they protect the guys that make the most money, right?
Mhm.
Protect the goal, protect the assets. And I think Mims, he just seems like a good dude. I don't know him, right? I don't know what his off the field character is like, but my guess is he's an awesome guy. And he's so young and he has so much room to develop. I could just see him with the right coach and the right offense, 16 years, no problem, like Trent Williams. You know what I mean?
Yeah. He's done well with the media. So I assume he had good interviews as well.
Oh, totally.
He does. The only thing, guys, we'll talk about draft. The only thing you're going to see about him when it comes draft time, and maybe he drops, who knows, with the NFL draft, but his on-field experience, I mentioned it a minute ago, only 8 starts at Georgia due to injuries, playing behind eventual NFL pros.
Yeah.
That's the only knock, but the reason what we just talked about and we showed you, that 40 and the other things that he was measured at, That's why he's making money, and he should go in the first round, absolutely. And one of the first tackles taken in the draft. Artie,
And it's
I
going to
think
come down to coaching, development. You got like just because these guys are pros does not mean they don't need to be developed. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? That's why again a different conversation for a different podcast. But like this Justin Fields thing, I'm like, poor guy's never been developed, right? It's
Yeah.
like quarterback is obviously even more important, but just because they get drafted in the first round or they have all the physical skills in the world, they're still NFL coaches for a reason. You got to
Mhm.
develop these guys. But I think if developed right, Mims has an opportunity to play 16 years in the league and be a staple of an offensive line for almost, a decade and a half.
Yeah, and it looks like he's gonna be the 12th offensive lineman drafted in Kirby Smart's tenure, and that's an
That's
incredible
insane.
number. And then Cedric Van Pran is probably gonna be the 13th right there this year. That's and they've sent 34 players to the NFL draft over the last 3 years. That's the most of a 3-year span by any program after setting the record with 15 taken in one draft a couple years ago. So, draft time is a Georgia recruiting pitch. Artie, I think a good
No
way to
question.
end this niche podcast about the NFL Combine here with Georgia Bulldogs who made money is to give us like just a brief recount of the process after the NFL Combine leading up to the draft a little bit.
Yeah, totally. So you kind of hinted at it, like I mentioned you were saying I'm interested to see who what Edwards runs and what Bowers runs. Obviously, there's after the combine, every school has a pro day. Every major school has a pro day, and so for me, when I left IMG Academy to go to the combine, I then went back to Atlanta, trained with Ryan Golden over in I think it's Sandy Springs. I could be wrong. Near Buford. I trained with Ryan Golden, who's done combine, pre and post, trained guys for years. David Andrews hooked me up with him. Awesome dude, really, really sharp guy, really successful trainer. And I trained with him just to do on the field to prep for the following season because I was not going to run again, jump again. I was just going to do on the field drills at pro day. We had a very seasonally late pro day. Usually Georgia does it pretty quickly, like 2 weeks after the combine, and most of the big schools do it right after the combine so they can let their players move on. Our year, Aaron Murray tore his ACL last home game of the season against Kentucky,
I was
so we
there.
pushed everything back to April. The draft was in May, and so that was unorthodox. So we had a longer period to continue to train, but pretty much it goes like this: combine, week or two to wait, and then pro day. And then some players will do on campus or on site visits by teams. Teams will fly them out or visit them, and they'll go do individual drills and have a visit with the teams that are most interested. I worked out with the Falcons. Obviously, I didn't get drafted by the Falcons. So it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to that team, but it's just an extra layer of looks that players will get. And really, it's just a sitting and waiting game, right? You continue to work out, you continue to try to put yourself in the best position for when you do get drafted, or you do get that call. But it's pretty stressful, right? The job interview continues. And, fortunately for me, I was drafted, but I was fifth round, which was the first round of the third day. And you just kind of we could probably talk more about the draft when around that time, but it's really a 6-month long job interview. And I was a kind of a middle of the round, potentially undrafted prospect. Guys like the first rounders and those quarterbacks, I mean, I saw what Murray had to go through, and Murray was a similar prospect to me. It's like, you want to talk about an autopsy on your life? Like, they are in your business, man, right? And I get it. They're investing in you, but it's a lot of pressure to put on, 20, 21, 22-year-old kids. And I think when a team is looking to evaluate someone to spend millions of dollars on in the first round, a guy like Brock Bowers, right, or Ladd McConkey, or in the case of the quarterbacks, right, the Mays and the Williams, and the Jaden Daniels of the world, I can't even. You got to be on your A game 24/7, 365, particularly in this day and age, right? People are probably watch you pump your gas when you're not looking. So
Yeah. Yeah.
It's an interesting world we live in, man. And now more than ever, the scrutiny is very high. And so I'm excited to see where all these guys end up. I think Georgia has done a really good job of developing them. So wherever they end up, I think they're going to find success.
Yeah, that's one key here, guys. That's the reason we get to do fun things like this and have really positive performances and stuff like this, because the development that Georgia staff really focuses on, and that's why they're recruiting. It comes easy. It comes easier when that's a reality, right? But hopefully, like you said, these guys perform well at the pro day next week, and give themselves a little bit of breathing room with a good performance there. And then I don't have this confirmed, but I'm assuming Carson Best's going to be throwing. So teams are going to get.
Can he?
Can't he? Is that a thing? I'm unaware. Or does it have to be like an underclassman throwing?
So when I was there, current roster players could not participate in said pro day. That may change.
Well, Carson threw last year.
Are you positive?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's different then.
The players picked him to throw, apparently. That's what I remember.
That's different then.
Okay. Well, like I said,
sure it wasn't Stetson?
Yeah, that was because it was a whole situation, apparently, that I remember.
Okay.
You know what? I don't want to leave our listeners with unknown, so I'm going to Google search this real quick to make sure we're up to speed.
So that was not always the case. That for my current players, I did not used to be able to participate in the pro days.
Okay, so he threw in the pro day in 2022. I was thinking last year for some reason. He threw in 2022, but he was still on the roster, obviously.
Maybe in a COVID thing? I don't know.
Could have. Well, it was 2022, right? Yeah, it was 2022.
Yeah.
Interesting. We don't know. Well, he threw there. And if he doesn't, you got Gunnar Stockton, Brian Puglisi, the freshman. I doubt that he would throw there with these guys. Doesn't have really a repertoire with them yet.
Yeah.
But regardless, right? We'll have some information coming out that. Artie and I are going to be back next week as well with a special guest yet to be named. We know who it is. Really excited to speak with him as Georgia gets kicked off here in spring practice. Which we really love and we really need, Artie. It's a boring time in sports, to be honest. We need this. I need football back in my life, and I count spring as football in my life.
Year round, baby. It's the SEC. It just means more.
Yes, sir. That's why we're here in the offseason in March 6th. Happy March, everybody. But so playerslounge.com is .io is where you can find my words as well. Interview with current Georgia players weekly. Also have words there as well as USA Today for UGA Wire. Check us out, the Pulse Sports Network. If you're watching, we appreciate you as always. Subscribe. And then if you're listening on podcasts, wherever you get those, we really appreciate the listen. Artie, it's great to see you, man. We'll be back soon.
Always good to see you, my brother. Talk soon. Go Dogs.